Well, given what we did last week, I probably should have seen this one coming. That's right, no build up here, we're heading to the dark side of the moon with Umbreon. Espeon and Umbreon really are the two coolest evolutions, huh? Like I said in the last video, they're the Pokemon you have when your main character is a literal criminal in Colosseum. So that makes them pretty badass in my book. Umbreon's also one of Gary's core Pokemon once he gets to Johto. It's not just a pretty face though, apparently Umbreon's sweat itself is actually poisonous. Yikes. I guess we just never had that happen to us because our Umbreons are all high friendship. Well, you learned how good his counterpart was last week, so it's time to find out how good was Umbreon actually. And in this video, we'll be covering these competitive formats. In keeping with its status as the dark-type counterpart of Espeon, Umbreon's stats were a mirror image, not exactly on the physical special axis, but instead on the offense versus defense line. With 110 defense and an almost impenetrable 130 special defense, backing up a 95 HP stat, Umbreon was incredibly hard to kill. Umbreon suffered from the exact same problems as Espeon though. Its move pool was utter trash. With awful attacking stats, it was actually a lack of usable support moves that made Umbreon so linear. But luckily for our Midnight friend, what it did have was perfectly suited for the GSC meta. GSC had a whole lot of Psychic and Ghost types running rampant, such as Exeggutor, Mischievous, and Starmie, but faced up against Umbreon, they all found themselves unable to really make a dent in its defenses, and Toxic Poisoning made them even more desperate to get away from the intimidating little rabbit dog thing. Once they switched out, unable to do anything, Umbreon landed a parting blow with Pursuit, dealing around half HP damage to his victims even despite Umbreon's low special attack stat. But what actually made Umbreon the cream of the crop as far as stallers went was a move you'll likely not see in competitive nowadays: Charm. Hey, we spent all that time talking about how debonair Umbreon is. Only makes sense it would put it to use. Charm was only used because GSC revolves so much around cursed setup users, who are Umbreon rid of all offensive momentum and then poisoned as well. This set was really quite simple. Stall out, pursuit switches, and rest up if you get hit by status. Status absolutely ended Umbreon because it needed to be active every turn and recovering HP by munching on its leftovers. So rest was imperative to its longevity. Its only permutations on the set involved Mean Look, one by charming an offensive attacker to its doom, and then Baton passing out to a setup mon that could set up, and the other by hitting the opponent with the double dose of Toxic and Confuse Ray, and then stalling out while they were trapped. It could also try to Baton pass Growth or Curse, but the issue with that was that Umbreon itself could then easily get set up on, because it couldn't really threaten offensively. Speaking of setup, that was easily Umbreon's biggest counter. Substitute, Sword Dance, and Belly Drum all mitigated Charm very well. This made Tentacruel, Poliwrath, and Machamp all its greatest threats, especially Machamp, whose forearm cross chop could actually put a dent into Umbreon. Poison, Steel, and opposing Dark types all handled Umbreon's stall quite well. Sure, they couldn't do much in return, but they were an easy way to get the momentum back against Umbreon. And finally, Heracross's dreaded Mega Horn did a whopping 75% at minimum, making even Umbreon's defenses look like paper. All that said though, Umbreon was solidly one of the best stallers in the game, and the fact that it demolished an entire playstyle and two entire types of Psychic and Ghost made it a solid pick for overuse. In Gen 3, the addition of Synchronize as its ability was a nice cosmetic change since status was one of Umbreon's biggest nuisances, but it functionally didn't change how Umbreon played pretty much at all. To be honest, Umbreon barely changed at all. What changes were made were due to its two new playthings in Wish and Taunt. Umbreon became a far more useful Baton passer once it had locked an opponent in with Mean Look, while they screamed and flailed uselessly against it. Umbreon could reliably pass to a counter because Taunt shut down setup Pokemon or phasers. This was especially strong with Parasong users like Celebi or boosting sweepers, who got the chance to come in on something they didn't fear at all. If needed, this set could even be run with Wish or Moonlight to make Umbreon a cleric. This strategy requires good execution but has all the potential to straight up win games by forcing unfavorable matchups for the opponent. Umbreon could also focus more on his cleric status by ditching speed investments and going all out in bulk, no longer worried about getting taunts off in time. Toxic or Substitute provided some sort of momentum, whether offensive or defensive, for the opponent, but with Protect, this Umbreon could transfer healing extremely reliably. The low speed actually was a huge boon. If going second, Umbreon would heal its teammate, typically an offensive powerhouse, while not giving the opponent any quarter to get in a cheap shot beforehand. Umbreon was also for a time completely standard on full Baton Pass chains, with the ability to trap an opponent with Mean Look and make setting up a piece of cake. Umbreon meant a shortcut to victory with past teams was very easy, but as other Baton Passers came to the fore, such as Ninjask, Vaporeon, and Scizor, Umbreon died out, as not being able to threaten the opponent as a utility mon was potentially game-ending. Aside from his signature Baton Pass set, hey, does that sound familiar? Umbreon also had some amalgamations of its limited move pool, such as different Baton Pass set focused on Curse, which worked extraordinarily well if not stopped because Umbreon's already stellar special defenses. Umbreon itself hated getting taunted, so faster taunters like Gyarados, Gengar, and Houndoom prevented it from doing anything. Seriously, the thing almost never ran attacking moves, so it could literally only struggle if taunted, which was understandably not great. If it didn't have speed investment, Tyranitar could actually outspeed it and set up Dragon Dance, which was potentially a death sentence. Fast substitutors such as Mr. Mime and its fellow evolutions Jolteon, Espeon would also usually get a sub and then pass out, leaving Umbreon stymied. Finally, fighting and bug types countered Umbreon super hard, able to consistently come in on it and threaten huge damage. Heracross, Breloom, Medicham, Hariyama, Primate, Machamp, the list goes on. Stall in general was not the metagame in Gen 3, which was instead focused on balanced defense, and Umbreon dropped to borderline. The physical special split barely affected something with as monstrous defenses as Umbreon anyways, and since fighting and bug types continued to harass it, barely anything changed. As Gen 4's metagames developed, Umbreon's stally ways were left behind. Umbreon simply couldn't cut it in a lot of rows, as a special tank Blissey literally and figuratively dwarfed him, and Tyranitar was an ubiquitously better Curse Sweeper. But the one thing that Umbreon did do well was mean look passing. Now we've talked about how powerful full Baton Pass chains were a few times in this series. In fact, we talked about it just last week with Espeon, and before that with Smeargle, two Pokemon who have always been in vogue when talking about Baton Pass. But Umbreon is a wholly different beast due to mean look, which got more usage in Gen 4 due to the expanded list of usable recipients, most notably Lucario and Heatran. If Umbreon could get a trap off late in the chain against something that they could come in on, that was GG right there. Really, understanding Umbreon's utility was just about understanding Baton Pass, and we've talked about that enough. For more info, follow these links in the description on Baton Pass in Gens 3 and 4, or watch our Espeon or Smeargle videos. What matters is Umbreon was overused in Gen 4 easily. Unfortunately for Umbreon, it was eclipsed, haha, get it? By Espeon in the full chain completely once its siblings got Magic Bounce. And what cool Dream World ability did Umbreon get? Inner Focus, the betrayal, jeez. Part of Espeon eclipsing it was sure Umbreon could pass mean look, but passing other stats and keeping the chain safe overall was quite a bit more valuable when it came to Baton Pass chains. Umbreon had Curse as its only real boosting move, and what's more, it was slow and didn't have offensive presence in case it needed to threaten the opponent immediately. Thus, Umbreon's popularity in Baton Pass teams died out quite a bit, and given that's what one of its niches was and overused, its overall popularity took a dip in turn as well. What also didn't help was that Gen 5 introduced so many strong fighting types, which were and always have been Umbreon's biggest counters, as they were able to knock it out easily. Overuse ended up being a playground for everything that Umbreon was afraid of, and unfortunately, it fell to underuse, with both its niches gone and its counters rampant. I say that early because sometimes when we talk about a set, we have to mention the metagame beforehand. Umbreon would be completely outclassed and overused by Blissey and others as a cleric, but in underuse, it finally got to take advantage of the heal bell it had received last generation, and the move Foul Play did actually give it a way to bypass its own low attacking stats. Combined with the classic Wish and Protect, it was solidly the best cleric in underuse. It could even try Toxic or Yawn to force switches, potentially generating momentum for its teams instead of just restoring them. With Baton Pass dead, there was honestly no chance for Umbreon to get back into the limelight, or the moonlight. The point is, it wasn't a top contender anymore. There were new, more shiny evolutions to play with, and unfortunately for Umbreon, it got absolutely nothing new in Generation 6. It stayed in the exact same place as it was last gen. A good cleric in underuse, but with no real place in overuse, arguably even less given the depth of Baton Pass. And it arguably has an even harder time now in underuse. It had to be even more careful with high-powered Pokemon with fighting type moves in its tier, like Choice Specs Hydreigon, packing Focus Blast. But it was still a solid choice. Just don't let things set up on it. So how good was Umbreon actually? This is a bit easier to say than its Psychic Twin. Even though Umbreon was used in Baton Pass strategies, it had fallen out of favor in those strats by the time they got banned. Overall, Umbreon was pretty decent throughout the years. It honestly has incredible stats for a wall and pretty good support move pool by Gen 6, but a Pokemon with next to no offensive presence is hard to use. Mean look passing was a great signature strategy to have, considering that's what made it overused in 2 gens in the first place, but just not viable as the power creep led to more things that could threaten Umbreon. But don't get me wrong, being an overused, borderline, and underused for its entire life is a pretty dang respectable thing, and it's more than I can say for some of the other evolutions. All evolutions have pretty thin move pools, but Umbreon makes his work. As a final note, John Hu ran an Umbreon on his VGC Worlds 2014 team with Snarl and Yawn, but it honestly didn't make it very far, and Umbreon in general was mostly only used to avoid flinches in VGC, and that's why we haven't covered VGC throughout this video. Thanks for watching, everyone, and as always, if you liked the video and want to see more, be sure to subscribe to False Swipe Gaming for more weekly Pokemon content. And of course, as I always say, comment on what Pokemon you want to see next. Perhaps maybe another evolution, but you know, again, I'm not going to do all the evolutions in a row unless you vote them in. And thank you so much to our patrons for continued support of our videos, and thank you to all of you as well. And follow my crew on the social media platforms, and that's all I got. See you next time, everyone.